All right, week 5 is here, which is one of the best weeks of the year. DJ, do you know why it's one of the best weeks? This is the first weekend of the season with an international game, which means, at least my time, and your time too, because we're both West Coast. Football starts at 6:30 a.m. and goes all the way until basically 8:30 or 9. So we get 14 consecutive hours of football to enjoy. There's a little bit of chill in the air for most of the country. It's the best. It's just the best. This is like the golden month to me of the football season because the weather is great and there's just so many games. So many, in fact, that we're talking about an extra game this week because we promised we would. But before we get into it, EJ, buddy, how you doing?
It's not just 1 month, it's 2. We have 55 straight days of football if you count college football and pro right now. We have entered a stretch where there are 55 straight days of football. So, if you want to talk about the golden hour of the year for, the old pigskin, here we go.
Not to mention that if you're a baseball fan, we got playoff baseball getting ready to go. Basketball is upon us. I think teams just started their training camps for basketball.
Preseason hockey.
Preseason hockey, I mean, everything. Like, this is the best time for sports. Not going to waste any more of your time. We're going to get right into it because we mentioned that it's an international game week, and that London game is Jets-Vikings, which has a lot of intrigue because, again, we're recording this on Wednesday night. We don't know if the circumstances are going to change by the time this goes live on Friday. It's possible Davante Adams could be on the Jets by the time they get on the jet to go over to England. It has been made known that Davante wants out of Vegas, and for good reason, let's be honest. It's also been made known publicly that the Jets and the Saints are two of the teams that he's most interested in for obvious reasons, because it's Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr. I would say looking at who needs him the most, it's probably the Jets right now. And the reason for that is because, quite frankly, they're not as balanced of an offense as we thought they were going to be going into the season. We know that they would like to run the ball with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. They would be extremely happy if they could get more than like a yard per carry. In fact, I'm pretty sure Breece got 0.3 yards per carry in their last game. So running the ball has been very difficult for them. And quite frankly, throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson hasn't been much easier. He's averaging less than 50 yards a game. I think Allen Lazard is just over 50 yards a game. And it's been a very up and down year for the Jets offense overall. I think Aaron has played pretty well, all things considered. I mean, he was throwing dots in that game against Denver. It just wasn't enough, right? They just couldn't get anything going on the ground. They stalled out multiple times. Next thing you know, Broncos get a cheeky touchdown, and that's it. Like they couldn't get more than 9 points. So if anybody could use them, I think it's the Jets because they have to throw and throw a lot. They're actually one of the highest teams in the league in terms of percentage of their total offense coming through the air because they can't get anything on the ground. And in the absence of no disrespect to Allen Lazard, in the absence of a true other threat across from Garrett Wilson, teams are just, absolutely mugging him as much as possible and saying, okay, beat us with everybody else. And they've had very mixed results with that. And quite frankly, it'd be a lot easier for them to get Garrett Wilson going if Davante was there too. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Financially, it's doable. It's not easy, but it's doable. And I would not be shocked if by the time this episode goes live on Friday, he's in a new city. Or technically a new continent, maybe.
They have gone all in. And on Gojo and Golic this morning, they said, why not go all in? Why not just go further in? Push more chips in. Because, again, you've got a window with Aaron Rodgers that's very limited. It's this year. It's maybe next year if you're extremely lucky. You got to win the Super Bowl or this is a failed experiment. It's over. And why not help the guy that you've invested all this money in with one of his favorite all-time pieces on offense? Davante wants out. Aaron could use the help. I understand the Saints angle. They too could use him, but they have a lot more balance. I think in terms of production, He's probably going to get more focused looks because of that relationship with Aaron Rodgers in New York, but I think he would get plenty of usage and maybe more overall team success if he headed down to New Orleans. But I see it the same way you do. The need is more desperate in New York, and I think the financials are, let me couch this by saying, slightly more palatable. They're not great in either place, but New Orleans is, chronically, comically over the cap. So adding somebody with Devontae's bill would be, I think it'd be interesting for the chaos grenade factor, but I could see him in green and white, and it would be odd, but also cool because it would be a big unlock for their passing offense. Maybe that helps them open up the run with the extra threat and defenses really having to sit back with Adams on one side, Garrett Wilson on the other. It would be some fun football to watch. So that's what I'm rooting for because I really don't have any skin in the game as a Raiders fan or a Jets fan or a Saints fan. So we'll see what happens with that one.
For the record, as usual, we always build an underdog slip as we go game by game. And Garrett Wilson is sitting at 54.5 right now. So we said he's averaging less than 50 yards a game. I kind of threw a Hail Mary on this one, and I said, okay, let's just say Devontae is a Jet by Sunday, and he's playing in this game, because if there's any quarterback that he could just literally get into town and play a game with, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. I went higher on Garrett Wilson at 54.5, because even worst case scenario, let's say this doesn't materialize, like they still are going to have to throw the ball to him like 12 times to make this thing work. So I went higher on Garrett Wilson. We'll see if I can also do an entry with Devontae as a Jet in a few days. As far as how he's going to handle Brian Flores and all his machinations, I guess we'll see. I mean, pass protection has actually been a strength of the Jets relative to their run blocking. They're a pretty decent pass pro team. And one of the ways to counter this Brian Flores offense is having an offensive line that can just handle all the funky stuff on their own and not needing to dedicate 7 guys, but being able to actually run 5-man pass protections and trust that they're going to be able to pass off stunts and pick up blitzes. And, because once you do that, then, okay, it's just palms. It's just quarters, but they're down a man. And so there's even more space. And so we can make this work. So when you're going against like a really good offensive line, like what we saw with Green Bay, that can pick that stuff up, it's a whole lot easier. So I'm curious to see how that matchup is going to work. And then I'm also curious to see the other side with this Jets defense going up against Justin Jefferson, because this is a very, very man coverage heavy defense. In fact, on third downs, kind of a wild stat, I thought the Texans ran a lot of man on third down at 40%. The Jets run man on third down at 46%. So we are liable to see a lot of Garrett Wilson or Justin Jefferson versus Sauce Gardner on third downs in this game. And that's about as box office as it gets. So a lot of intrigue in this one. If I had to guess who's going to win, it's probably going to be the Vikings, because they've just been a threshing machine so far. But I wouldn't entirely count the Jets out. If Aaron Rodgers, A, is still throwing it like he has been, and B, if that offensive line is picking up all these stunts and blitzes as well as they have been.
With all the focus on Flores' defense, and rightfully so, they've been lighting it up this year, I think this one really boils down to a very good Jets defense. This is the 3rd best defense in yards allowed, 5th best defense in points allowed, versus that very high-flying Kevin O'Connell passing attack with Sam Darnold pulling the trigger at a league-leading rate. His 11 touchdowns lead the NFL. But Ulbricht's D is 2nd in EPA per play allowed versus the pass, and that's certainly the Vikings' strength. 3rd in pressure rate, all while having the 19th lowest blitz rate. So they get home with their front 4. They can really pressure. You talked about their corners. Sauce has had an up and down year. People don't seem to be as afraid of Sauce as they used to be. They're throwing at him a little bit more and having some success, but corner across from him is playing very well as well. And we're going to see, I think, Justin Jefferson try and float around, make the most of those matchups. On the other side, O'Connell's offense, look, we've all seen what they've put up. third in pass yards per play, ninth in EPA per pass play. First, like I said, in TDs with 11. That's 3 better than the next team. I agree. We're only 4 games in, but 11 touchdowns by Sam Darnold is 3 better than the second place team, all while having the 21st lowest percentage of passing plays in their run pass ratio.
That's nuts.
So
that's just
they
nuts.
don't throw it nearly as much as some other people, and they're getting a lot more out of it. So super high-powered offense. We know about the Florence defense on that side, and purple being very high-powered as well. But don't count out that Jets defense because they've been really good. It's a tremendous test for them. And it is a sort of rubber meets the road game. We're going to know how good that defense is in green after this one because there really isn't a better offense overall, both sides in the NFL right now. Certainly not top 5. We're going to know whether or not Ulbricht's defense is for real.
I'm going to press you to make a pick on this one. Are you also taking Vikings?
I think Vikings are more balanced. The super coin flip wild card here is overseas game. Different teams handle it very differently, and weird stuff happens. And we've seen teams try and go to school on other teams' approaches and say, oh, we're going to go early, we're going to go late, we're going to get plenty of time to adjust, we're not going to do any kind of adjustment, we're just going to roll in. It's way earlier on players' body clocks. I realize that's much more common in international soccer and world rugby and all kinds of tournaments like that. For the NFL, it's a pretty large disruption. We talk about, West Coast teams having to play on the East Coast. Take that and double it. It's a wild card. You can never tell. And a lot of times seems like each of the last 2 years in one of these games that we've talked about, we've been like, oh no, this is the superior team. And they have rolled out super duper flat in these games. And you're like, what happened? And you're like, oh, right. London game, 6:30 start for us, much earlier start for them in terms of body clock. And it's just difficult. So on a neutral field in the States, I think the Vikings win this game. They are better balanced on offense and defense, both in this one, with a wild Devontae Adams sighting to prop up the offense a little bit. Just talked about how good the Jets defense is. They could take it. Be interesting. I'm still going with the guys in purple. They've been more consistent all year.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it's also the Sam Darnold revenge game part 3. So, maybe part 4 at this point. I don't know. He's played the Jets a few times. But that is an element here. Like I'm sure he would kind of love to stick it to those who abandoned him once upon a time and, foisted Adam Gase upon him and almost ruined his career by doing so. So, yeah, he's got a little extra to play for. Next game on the docket, Cowboys-Steelers. Speaking of old scores to settle, this one goes back to the 70s. This one is in Pittsburgh. So you got the Cowboys in town for their once every 8-year trip to Western Pennsylvania. This game is the battle between injured offensive line versus injured defensive line because Micah's hurt, Tank Lawrence is hurt, and then you look across the Steelers' offensive line and literally the entire offensive line from what was slated to be their starters in the summer has gotten hurt to some degree. Troy Fautanu's out. Isaac Seumalo is probably coming back this week, but he's been injured. Broderick Jones has been playing injured. James Daniels is now out for the season with an Achilles. Their originally intended starting center, Nate Herbig, is also out, which Frazier ended up being better anyway, but still, like, their original starting 5 that they thought they were going to have in July, all of them have gotten hurt to some level. So we don't know if we're going to see Spencer Anderson or Mason McCormick at right guard as of now, but we think the new starting 5 for the Steelers offensive line is going to be Dan Moore, Seumalo, Frazier, either McCormick or Anderson, and then again a banged up Broderick Jones at right tackle, versus a Cowboys defensive line that is missing their 2 best players. So stoppable force meets movable object, I guess is the general theme here, and I think that's going to be probably rougher on the Cowboys than it is on the Steelers, because the Steelers, I mean, we know that they've had depth going into this year, and that depth has been tested, and they've been okay despite those injuries. If you take Micah and Tank out of the Cowboys defensive line, I don't think they're going to be okay. So on one hand, that's rough for them. On the other hand, I don't think the Cowboys offensive line can block the Steelers front. So they might lose in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Long story short, kind of a rough matchup for Dallas. I don't really like this one for them.
Dallas is not built to win this game. Like, they're just not. They have no real run game of their own, and they can't stop opponents from running at all. Like, not even a little bit. They are last in creating their own rushing yards per game, 75.3. They are giving up the 6th most rushing yards per game and also the 5th most rushes for more than 10 yards. Oof. Like, they can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. If you talk to just about anybody in football, it reminds me of a conversation with Matt Bowen. He said, man, if you can't set an edge on defense, like, it's going to be a long day. If you can't stop the run and you can't run the football at all, like, you're literally last in the league, and you're playing a team that, you know, can run the football again when their offensive line is healthy. And, like, what does that set Dallas up to do? We talked about this before. It sets them squarely up to try and pass to win, which puts them directly in the sights of the Pittsburgh defensive line, which we haven't talked about because they are healthy and they're very efficient. They're very, very efficient. They are ferocious. Fastest time to pressure in the league, 2.45 seconds on average. I'm betting the Steelers are going to drag the Cowboys in close and beat the living hell out of them with body blows. And we're going to end up with some 14-9 Tomlin splatter paint masterpiece where he just brought somebody in, stepped on their face for, 45 minutes or an hour, and then said, no, it wasn't super pretty, but we'll take the W because
some people pay for that, EJ.
Some people do. I don't think Dallas is equipped to punch back at the same level. They're injured, and again, in the trenches where this game's going to come down. Certainly Pittsburgh's going to make it that way at home. I just don't see Dak getting enough time to go over the top to CD a couple of times and make it worthwhile. I just see this as a pounded out affair. And if that's the case, that's the Steelers game, not the Cowboys game.
What's interesting about the Steelers, and again, this is partially because Jalen Warren's been injured and all the injuries to the offensive line. The Steelers have been more of a, we're going to get rushing yards by volume rather than efficiency type offense. If we're just looking at running backs, i.e. Najee for the most part, they are 25th in yards before contact per attempt, 25th in yards after contact per attempt, and 25th in overall yards per carry.
So they're consistent.
So they're very consistent of being just below average to almost straight up bad. But they're 16th overall in running back rushing yards because they're 6th in attempts. So they do it a lot, and they don't particularly care if it works. But if there was ever an opportunity for a get-right game, it is a Cowboys front seven that is soft as baby shit. So I don't know, man. This is the exact type of game that I pick against the Cowboys, and then they end up winning it anyway. But boy, as off as it looked against the Giants, even though they beat the Giants, like we ended up at the end of that Thursday night stream saying, like, if they play like this again against the Steelers, they're going to get waxed. And I still stand by that. So it's just not a good matchup for them. As far as the underdog entry, I went lower on Dak at 255.5 passing. And the only reason it's that high is because they're acknowledging, like, yeah, they ain't running the ball in this one. Like, it's just throw. But at the same time, Joey Porter Jr. is a much better corner than Deonte Banks overall. So it's not like they can just feed CD 15 times in this game and say, okay, save us. So I went lower on Dak at 255.5. If you want to go higher on Dak, there is an opportunity to do that, by the way, because the new customer special is at half a yard. We're assuming they can get at least half a passing yard in this one without TJ Watt killing them. That is available to new customers on Underdog. So if you want to play along with us, do an entry for all the Sunday games. Build your own entry out of probably a bunch of Steelers running backs, if I'm being honest. You can go to the link in the description or at the QR code on the screen. Use promo code BOOTLEG. Get up to $1,000 in deposit bonuses. And, of course, that Dak free pick. Now, I will say, if there is a saving grace for the Cowboys in this game, it's the other quarterback, Justin Fields. Not that I think he's played like particularly poorly. I think he's been fine. But in the last game, there were a couple like, let's just say Justin Fields-y type plays where it's like, oh, you're doing so good. And then he will just do something like catastrophic, like take just a horrific sack. He'll fumble the ball. And you're like, okay, you did well for like 8 snaps in a row and then just completely shit the bed. And that's always been the Justin Fields story is it looks great, it looks great, looks great. Oh, turnover, right? Or, oh, really bad sack. Offense is behind the sticks. Can't dig out of the hole. Wash, rinse, repeat. That started to rear its head a little bit in their last game. I'm not saying that like he's reverting back to Chicago, Justin Fields. I am saying that still exists. And if he does that 2 or 3 times in this game, just like he did against Indy, that will cause them problems. If there's one thing that can screw up the Steelers in this game from winning with their normal Steelers formula, it is Justin Fields making mistakes like that, taking bad sacks, turning it over, all that kind of stuff. Honestly, if Justin just makes 0 mistakes, but also makes 0 explosive plays, they probably win this by a lot. If he starts making mistakes, they probably lose.
I would agree. And Justin, for the most part this year, has stayed away from those compounding mistakes. He's played very cleanly, for lack of a better term, until last week. And that's what we would call good Justin. Kind of like last year we had good Baker under Dave Canales in Tampa Bay, and we got to see all the positive attributes he brings without turnovers in bunches and wild plays. Justin saves those plays and stacks them together. So like you said, he'll have multiple plays where he has, very solid play. He's structure. He's fine. Might not be explosive or flashy, but it's not bad either. And then he will run around for a long time, take a 20-yard sack and fumble all at once. And it's like, okay, huge yardage loss, explosive play for the defense, and a turnover. Like you did it all in one play. You saved it up. And those are very hard to overcome from a team like the Steelers that is built to play fundamental, sound, controlled football that is not necessarily explosive. This is not a team built to boat race. And they can only afford one of those or 2 of those before the balance tips to the opponent. So if Justin can get back to his first 3 weeks of play and be good Justin, that is buttoned up, plays within the system, doesn't try and do too much, and certainly doesn't stack bad plays together, the Steelers' chances in this one look pretty darn good. If the lid comes off and he does that 2 or 3 times, it's anybody's ball game.
Yeah, they only took like 2 sacks a game in the first 3 weeks, and then they took 5 last week. It just can't. This is not an offense that can dig themselves out of that kind of hole, at least not regularly. So we'll see. I'm picking the Steelers to win. I assume you're also picking the Steelers to win?
At home, for sure.
One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com, and if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show, and with that, let's get back to it. All right, game number 3 on the docket here. Bills-Texans. This is the hardest one, honestly, because it's a playoff game in October. It's two very evenly matched teams. It's two teams that have, records that we expected, but also have gotten blown out. So, like, they're not infallible. Like, they do have weaknesses that, ironically, two different purple teams have exploited in the last couple weeks. But it doesn't mean that they're still not extremely strong. It doesn't mean that they're still not probably 2 of the 4 or 5 best teams in the entire conference. It's great quarterbacks. It's great weapons. And I know people disagree that the Bills have weapons. They do. Trust me. It's great, well-coached defenses. Like, there's a lot to love about both of these teams, and they are colliding for the first time this season, but probably not the last time.
Yeah, Bills head out on the road to test their extremely balanced modern offense. It really started in the middle of last year, but this year it's been on full display. They are almost perfectly balanced. This is the Thanos dagger offense. 49.5% pass, 51.5% run. Like, right down the middle, which even by NFL average, NFL offenses pass more than they run by up to 10%, and that's pretty typical. Not the Bills this year. Joe Brady has got them on that knife edge right down the middle. The 6th lowest percentage of passing plays in the league, but they are fine with that. Again, they are winning with that formula. 2nd overall in EPA per play as an offense. So with that, I would say abnormally low pass ratio, they are still extremely explosive. They are being very, very efficient with that mix, and it is working for them. Also, they just got smacked in a national game. Like, that hurts. I don't care who you are as an athlete or at what level. When you're playing extremely well and you roll in to play another very good team, which they did in the Ravens have been close all year. They could have been 3-0. They could have been 4-0. They were inches away from that happening. Their record didn't look it, but they rolled the Bills. We watched that game while I was at your house, and it was a tail kicking from early on. Like, that just, it was not a fair fight. And by the end of the game, you were very sure which team was ready to keep playing and which team didn't want any more at all. So the Bills are licking their wounds. They have to go on the road. It is not an easy slate for them. They go out and go up against the Texans D. Anderson and Hutter on the edges, who've combined for 35 pressures. They are allowing the 4th lowest pass yards per game in the league and the 5th lowest yards per play overall. So the Texans defense is not just going to roll over and go, "Oh, get healthy, Bills. We're happy to accommodate you here in Houston." It's going to be an extremely tough game. Bills have every reason to want to rebound. And I agree with you. They have the weapons to do it. They are balanced, and I do think they have playmakers. We said in the offseason series that the sort of reports of their demise were probably exaggerated. There's going to be a little bit of a dip while they got it going. There hasn't even really been that. So I'm looking forward to the game in terms of two equal teams that I agree, like you do, that they are going to meet later this year. They are powers. They are going to keep banging into each other, whether it's this year or next year. They are both led by superior quarterbacks. It should be a fun game, and both teams have a motivation to kind of go, yeah, all right, fine. Ravens might be up at the top, but we're right underneath them. But they can't both be there. There's one spot and 2 teams. So 2 teams enter, 1 team leaves. We'll see who it is.
The fascinating part about this game to me is the Texans do a lot of the same stuff that the Ravens offense does that could punish this Bills defense, but they do it from different personnel groupings. The Ravens, very heavy in terms of 21 and 22 personnel, and obviously 12 personnel as well. The Texans were a heavy 21 personnel team last year when they had Andrew back. They barely run it at all this year. They pretty much don't use British Brooks at fullback at all. And they do run a bunch of 12 personnel as well, but they are double the Ravens in terms of their amount of 11. Even with their injuries at wide receiver at Tank Dell, they still run a lot of 11 personnel. That being said, they also run the ball a lot when they can. And I think that's where Joe Mixon comes in. He practiced last Friday. They held him out of the game, I think specifically because they were saving him for Buffalo. He's probably going to play this week. And Joe Mixon, just like Derrick Henry, is a big, physical, veteran running back that knows how to run outside zone, knows how to set up blockers, but more importantly, knows how to absolutely run over DBs. The Bills' defense in the first 3 weeks of the season against outside zone specifically allowed 1.3 yards per carry. Against Baltimore, 9.4. And it was not just because Derrick Henry broke off like a long run. I'm talking like consistent chunk plays because Derrick Henry, has run outside zone a million times in his life at this point. So he understands the pace and the space of it. He understands just looking at the front pre-snap, how they're going to fit it. So he knows exactly how far he can press it before he has to cut it back. He knows exactly like which hole he thinks he's going to hit and how best to set that up so that he's one-on-one with a 200-pound safety instead of a 230-pound linebacker. Like he is so good at just setting himself up to face one of these young DBs. And those young DBs can't tackle. That is why Baltimore ran all over them, was because they consistently attacked the corners and they attacked the safeties. They didn't go through the DTs. They didn't go through the linebackers. They looked at Damar Hamlin and said, "You're ours." And they went after him. They even got Bedford. Like, just consistently muscling their way through that Bills secondary. And I think that's kind of the striking difference between this Bills defense and previous year's Bills defenses when you had Micah and Poyer, who were great tacklers. More importantly, great tacklers from depth. Because this is a defense that runs a lot of too high stuff. Even when they're running a single high coverage, they start in too high. So you still have a lot of ground to cover if you're a safety coming from depth to fill your run responsibility. And these guys just can't tackle like Micah and Poyer. Like they're already halfway, like the secondary, all the corners and safeties combined are already halfway to the total combined missed tackles of last year. And we're 4 weeks into the season. Like they can't get big running backs on the ground. And I think the Texans know that. The Texans are going to run outside zone just like Baltimore did. They do it at an extremely high rate, almost 60%. That's third most in the league. So you have a rushing offense that wants to attack the edges, that wants to attack the DBs with a big veteran running back. Where have we seen this before? Oh, yeah. Like a few days ago. They do it differently, right? They don't do it with a 285-pound fullback like Patrick Ricard, but they still do it. So I don't like that matchup at all for the Bills. I think, people are looking at like, oh, Stroud and Diggs and Nico and, going toe-to-toe with Josh and friends and everybody's going to throw it all over the yard. Like, no, they're not. Texans are running the ball in this game. Like, this is the Joe Mixon game. This is another week 1 where they gave him 30 carries. Like, ankle injury or not, that's what they want to do here. I think that's what they're going to do. And God help Damar Hamlin, because he's going to be in for a world of hurt in this one, just like he was last week.
Yeah, the linebackers for Buffalo have been taking quite a bit of heat this week as well. They've been dinged up there for sure. Obviously, Milano, hurt before the season started. Balen Spector's filled in admirably, but there's a talent drop off there, and the Texans can exploit that inside too. We're going to see it pressed over and over again, and I think you're right that this is probably more ground and pound than it is high flying until the Bills start to commit, right? McDermott's going to say, okay, we're getting our ass kicked. I've got to do something. And when he pulls in, that's Stroud and company's calling card to just be like, all right, cool. Now we're getting single coverage. We know what to do with that. Thanks. We appreciate that, Bills. So if they can open the can using the run, particularly Mixon, probably to the outside, but also to the inside as well, to the point where the Bills go, well, we don't want to die that way. I think, their fate might get accelerated at that point. We'll see.
Yeah, it's die slow or die fast. Take your pick. Again, I think it's going to be a close game just because Josh Allen is such a freaking alien, and their offensive line is kind of built to handle the style of pass rush the Texans have, because they don't blitz a lot. They don't stunt a lot. It's very much just straight like 4-man rush, compress the pocket, all that kind of stuff. And Josh is very comfortable in that type of environment. Like if you compress the pocket on him, he's like, I don't care. I'm 6'6", 240. Like I'm not going to get nervous. So, and not to mention like the Bills' offensive line is built for a bar fight too. So, like I don't particularly think the Texans' defense is going to have a great day either. And really, it's just going to come down to the Texans' offense running and just keeping Josh off the field. Like that's how you win. Is you just don't let the bad man go out there. The Stephon Diggs narrative also exists in this game, but not really. Like, I don't think this is going to be like the Stephon Diggs revenge game where he rolls out with like 7 for $120. Like, you shouldn't have got rid of me. Like that. No, that's not what's going to happen here. And I don't think Stephon cares that much. I think he just, he's catching touchdowns and he's winning games. I think he's happy. I don't think Josh has a lot of animosity about it. I don't even think the fans have that much animosity about it. The media, I think, has made a lot about it because it's Stephon Diggs and it's the Bills. But that is such like not even a secondary, it's such a tertiary narrative to this game that I don't think that that's going to have a huge impact on what happens on the field.
Yeah, if Stephon was playing the Nico Collins role, maybe that would be true.
Yeah, but he's the number 2.
Yeah, he is clearly not. He has not been that kind of contributing factor to the Texans' success. He is contributing. He's not been a non-factor, but he is not a leader, a driver necessarily on this team who is loud and flashy and upfront. And I think he's probably fine with that. Flipping it back to the Bills side for 1 second, there is going to be pressure if the Texans start to do what we've said they might and exert their will on offense. There is going to be pressure for Josh to cape up. And
he has to resist it.
I understand. We both understand that Josh Allen is his best self when he resists the superhero urge. Let's just call it that. So the Texans do have some very talented defensive backs who are going to be waiting if Josh decides to, go full sugar high Josh mode and toss some silly balls their way. They're going to be ready. So I hope that doesn't happen because, again, the best Josh is Josh playing within himself and within this very balanced offense and not going, I can do it all myself. But if they're down late in this one, there's going to be a great temptation to do that.
Again, we're doing 6 games, which means 1 game would not make the underdog entry for the week. This is the one. And the reason why
you stayed away, did you?
I did. Here's the thing. It's because there is no Joe Mixon number yet. Because it hasn't been confirmed that he's playing.
Got it.
So that's going to pop up probably later in the week. Like, again, we're recording this on a Wednesday night. So we don't have, like a few, 2 or 3 consistent days of practice. I suspect by like Friday night, Saturday night, he's going to have carry totals, yardage totals, touchdown, et cetera, et cetera. Take those. They don't exist right now. So I didn't put it on there. But whatever the Joe Mixon numbers are, yes, please. Like I almost don't even care what they are. Like it's going to be that kind of game for me. At least I think it is. All right. 4th game on the docket. Cardinals, Niners. Full disclosure, I'm not talking a whole lot about the Cardinals today. I'll leave that to EJ.
I'll take that job.
I've talked a lot about the Cardinals over the last 4 weeks, especially on this show. For a show that is that has a national audience and covers every single team, we sure have talked quite a bit of Arizona Cardinals. We have not talked a lot of 49ers, which is odd because they're the 49ers. What I want to focus on, when discussing this 49ers team is the pass rush has been disappointing, and it's only going to be even more disappointing now that Hargrave is out. They have really struggled to get pressure from anybody not named Nick Bosa, and I'm kind of ignoring last week because they played against the Patriots, who were literally the worst offensive line in the NFL by a lot. If you're looking at pressure allowed percentage, they got a bunch of sacks, they got a bunch of pressure. I don't care. When they face any other offensive line, they've been 26th in terms of pressure rate. That's the part I care about, and that was with Hargrave. So, a defense that has been historically defined by the dominance of their defensive line doesn't have a dominant defensive line anymore, which has been concerning. But on the other side, the reason why this team is still 2-2 anyway, despite having a bunch of injuries, with CMC, with Kittle, with Debo, despite having an offensive line that still struggles in pass protection, like they're 22nd in terms of pressure allowed percentage on true drop back passes. This is not a play action heavy team. They're 31st in terms of play action rate. They've thrown like 2 screens the entire year. We talked a lot about this over summer, how it's not a quarterback friendly system, contrary to popular belief. Like Brock is the system. They don't lean on play action. They don't lean on manufactured touches. They don't RPO you to death like we talked about with Jaden Daniels, where like 76% of their early down plays are screens and runs. Like the Niners don't do that. So they put a lot on Brock with not a whole lot of defensive support, at least in the core position group that makes that defense go. Without a whole lot of support from the offensive line, and they're 8th in drops. And yet, despite all of that, this team is 2-2 because Brock is 2nd in yards. He is 1st among starting quarterbacks in yards per attempt. Malik Willis is higher, but Malik was also a backup, and he played in 2 games, and I think in one of those games he threw like 12 passes. So we'll throw out Malik Willis. If we're just looking at players that have started all 4 games, he is 1st in yards per attempt. He is 4th in average depth of target. This is not a check down Charlie situation. He is bombing it down the field. He is 4th in big time throw percentage. He is 20th in turnover worthy plays, which is good. You want to be low in that. So I think he is playing like a legitimate MVP candidate. Again, when you factor in not great pass protection, not a super friendly system. Like they put a lot on him. It's not manufactured touches. Below average offensive line and pass protection. Defense isn't really pulling its weight unless they're playing against the fucking Patriots. This is an MVP type performance we're witnessing here. And he hasn't gotten any credit for it. Like I look around at the national media, I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? Like Brock Purdy is playing his ass off. This is the best he's ever played. Like, by far, it's the best he's ever played. And he was already pretty darn good. But he is not playing like a top 10 quarterback. He's playing like a top 5 quarterback this year. And he might not even be 5. Like, this is a remarkable growth for Brock Purdy that is getting no press because this team is 2-2. And that is wild to me.
I think there's fatigue because... Look, we're as guilty as anybody of talking about the Niners a lot. We fell into the trap of talking about them a lot early last year, and then, of course, they were in it, so we talked about them all the way down the stretch. We talked about the Niners a lot on Bootleg last year. And the rest of the media, I think, is the same. There are so many names. CMC, Kittle, Debo, you name them. The offensive line, everybody goes, Trent Williams, and then stops, doesn't go down the rest of the offensive line or look at the offensive line as a unit, which is really what offensive line play is all about. So there's just a lot of fatigue. And so those guys are hurt. Those names are hurt. A lot of people have not come to terms with what Brock has made himself into as a player, which we've talked about on this podcast quite a bit. And we were really excited this offseason. We said, hey, this is his first full offseason with the playbook, fully healthy. Like, we think he could be pretty good. And everybody went out and got hurt, and everybody's looking for other storylines. Meanwhile, Brock's over there shooting the lights out, going, hey, it all worked, guys. Like, everything you said was going to happen is happening. I'm making it happen, and even more so, like at a higher level. And I'm with you. Underreported, he's playing exceptional football because all those guys got hurt and they haven't gone in the tank. And I think everybody just tends to think, oh, well, there's this huge assemblage of talent. Well, we've talked about the defensive line drain. It ain't the same as it was. We talked about the coaching drain. Like Nick Sorensen's had his struggles on defense. It's not the same team. It's Brock shooting the lights out, keeping him at 500. And that's pretty darn impressive.
I think overall, when you look at the NFC West between Purdy, Stafford, and Geno, if we're just looking at this season, half of the top 6 quarterbacks in the NFL this season have been in one division. That is absurd. But the quarterback play over in the NFC West has been absurd. There is no other way to describe it.
Well, I get to talk about the other one because you mentioned 3
number
out
4.
of the 4. Yeah. Clearly number 4 this year. I want to know if Kyler's for real. And I know Cardinals fans do too. Or will we only ever get the super high flashes of what I'll call consistently inconsistent play? He's played in 4 games this year after a full offseason of prep, much like Brock Purdy. Wasn't injured, had the same coaching staff, didn't have turnover to deal with. He's been pressured at the 11th lowest rate in the league through 4 games. In 3 of his 4, his average yards per attempt is 6.1. Now, in the one game that everybody talks about, it was 15.5, which is amazing. But for the majority of his games, AYPA is 6.1. In those 3 games, he averaged 170 yards passing per game. He took 9 of his 10 total sacks, and all 3 of those were losses. So we saw the high highs. We got really excited. We said, yes, this is what the Arizona offense can be. This is what Marvin Harrison Jr. means to that franchise. Let's go. And 2 duds after that. He's got all the things now. He's got a decent offensive line, I would say above average. He's got weapons. He's got an offensive coordinator that's proven at least reasonably capable. I know a lot of people are saying Drew can't scheme the pass. He can only scheme the run. He's at least average as far as NFL play callers go. If Kyler doesn't turn it around by mid-season, if we don't start seeing consistency of good and solid play, not high flashes and then big troughs of 2 or 3 games, which is what we've seen almost his whole career, I don't know what else you can point to at this point, because it's not injury and it's not a new offense and it's not a lack of people around him, which have all been legitimate complaints in the past. Those are all taken care of, and we're still seeing very similar results. He just has to be better. And if he's not, I can see Arizona wanting to make a change. And before anybody screams in the comments, I know the money is absurd. But if your quarterback is not going to help you win, what are we doing here? Especially in the division we're talking about, which is extremely competitive and has great quarterback play. And if you're not getting that, you're basically guaranteeing yourself 4th spot in your own division, which means no playoffs. It means no division winning, and it means no wild card. So I know it sounds crazy, but we're in year 6 already. Like, it's time. With this level of stuff around him, we need to know. I'm not saying he can't do it or that he won't. I'm saying he has to, or else.
And I think what's frustrating about it is, okay, they've invested a lot in weapons. You know, like James Conner's been a mainstay. He's been awesome. But, you know, we got this young, explosive back behind him in Trey Benson. We have one of the best tight ends in the NFL in Trey McBride. We drafted Marvin. Like, we got Wilson. Like, Greg Dortch has come on. Like, if you look at the Cardinals' array of weapons and compare it to, say, the Giants, like even factoring in the Malik Neighbors of it all, if you're just looking at the depth of weapons, they're better than the Giants. They're better than probably the bottom, at least the bottom third of the NFL. In fact, they're probably better in the bottom half of the NFL, if I'm being real about it. So, like, they have weapons, and the offensive line, and we've talked glowingly about a bunch of different offensive lines in terms of their pressure percentage allowed on true drop-back passes, meaning no play action, no screens, no RPOs. We've talked very well about the Texans' offensive line. They're a top 10 line. We've talked about the Packers line. They're always good. We've talked about the Saints line. You know, at one point they were like at 10% pressure allowed. Now they're at 26 point something percent, but they're a top 5 line in the NFL. You know who's ranked higher than all of them? The Cardinals. They're the 4th most efficient pass blocking line in the NFL as far as true dropbacks. Again, I know it's a nerdy caveat, but it matters. So offensive line is good. Weapons are good. Offensive coordinator, we like. The fuck's up? Like, what else is there? I don't know what else to blame. All the support is there. And they're still, other than one game, they're still the Cardinals. That's what's frustrating about it, is like Monty has done such a good job of building a structure that we just talked about in our last episode about how, structure and supporting cast matters so much. They did that. They built one, and they're still bad. So now what? Where do we go from here? I don't know. If I was a Cardinals fan, I'd be tearing my hair out, because I look at this roster and I'm like, we should at least be 500. And we don't even look competitive in 75% of our games. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and Cardinals fans will jump in the mentions and rightfully so, and say, but he can do it. And they're correct. He absolutely can. We've all seen it. But we've also seen a lot of other quarterbacks like him who are exceptionally talented and can do it, but don't most of the time. And there are as many of those littered throughout the league as, there are teams and histories. Is Kyler one of those guys, or can he elevate his game so that he can bring all those amazing gifts to bear on a week-to-week basis and positively affect the outcome of his team? Or is he just one of those guys with crazy highlight plays, some amazing and memorable games, but when you look back at the sum total of his career, you do not come up with the word greatness. You come up with coulda, woulda, shoulda, and there's a huge difference. There is a demarcation line in the NFL for quarterbacks between those guys that were super talented and can do it or could have done it, and the guys who actually do.
So I just wanted over the cap because I'm curious. I was like, what's Kyler's like yearly number, right? So he's at 46.1 million. That is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th, 10th highest number for a quarterback in the NFL. These are just a few of the quarterbacks that are below him that tend to get better results. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, dare I say Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud.
Yeah. The rookie wage scale is a little bit tricky, but for all the other guys that have already been paid, which is more apples to apples, he is, paid more handsomely than several of them. And his results, if you're talking about consistency and overall achievement for his career, are nowhere near. And again, people have said, well, if he had X, if he had Y, he would be there. He would be just like those guys. And now he has X and has Y, and we need to see that. We need to see him be just like those other guys. And if he can't, if you're Monty, you've got to be thinking it's time to go and find that guy, because again, in the division we're in, we're not going anywhere until we can be, competitive to be at least the second best quarterback in the division. And that's going to be very tough to do in that division.
Yeah, well, the second best quarterback in the division might be the fifth best quarterback in the entire league this year. So
that's right.
Again, unless you got one of them, it's tough. It's tough. Now, speaking of top 5 quarterback in the entire league, the underdog entry for this game is Brock higher than 252.5 passing, which personally I find insulting because he literally has the second most yards in the entire NFL at this point. So why he's only at 252.5 against a Cardinals defense that can't rush the passer? Okay, I'll take that all day. I still think people just aren't fully aware of how good Brock Purdy is. But I'm adding that one on there. So far, we're Garrett Wilson at 54.5 receiving, Dak at under 255.5 passing, Purdy at over 252.5 passing. Fifth game on the docket now. Another great NFC West quarterback who is doing his best to make a lot out of a little. Matthew Stafford, God bless him. He unfortunately has to deal with a very pissed off, very talented Packers team this week that had a admirable but disappointing outing against the Minnesota Vikings, who might be the best team in the conference right now. And a banged up Rams team is probably not a great matchup for anybody, but they're especially not a great matchup for a Green Bay Packers squad that is capable, not even capable, very good at stopping everything that the Rams still kind of sort of do well. Like if I'm the Rams and if I had the ability to pick my opponent for this week specifically, I think the Packers would be like one of the 4 last names I would draw, truly. And yet they got to go in there and do it. And I feel for them. This is a tough one.
The beginning of September feels like a very long time ago indeed if you're a Rams fan. Remember back to the Halcyon days of Cup and Puka. Yeah,
I think we got like 15 plays of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It ain't that. McVay and the Rams have made their wins out of smoke, mirrors, and duct tape, but the injuries are just ridiculous at this point. Yes, all NFL teams get injured, but not necessarily at the same level. They don't all take injuries to their most important starters. Some do, and the Rams, it's just their turn in the barrel this year. It's not great. So Stafford's trying to do it all with Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, and a very plucky Jordan Whittington, I might say. But that's not a lot of firepower. And again, he's not backing down from the challenge because he's Matt Stafford, but it's tough to do week after week. And the Packers D is not going to do the Rams any favors. 10th lowest EPA per play allowed, tied for 4th in sacks with a bunch of other teams at 13, 18th most total pressures generated. For their part, the Rams D is number 1 in the league, thanks to a young and ferocious D-line. So, hello, defensive gem, Braden Fisk. Yes, he was.
And Jared Verse.
See, you got Jared, 1. I got Braden, and they are both powering this pass rush. So, like, the Rams are going to, like, pressure the passer, but Green Bay, I think, is going to annihilate the passer. The offensive line's dinged up. They don't have all their weapons. Stafford is seemingly ageless and invulnerable, but he gets dinged every week. I mean, it's got to add up. So the Packers, like you said, are very good at shutting down the concepts the Rams run. The Rams are also without a lot of very impactful players. And yeah, while the Rams can generate pressure on their side, they're a very Jekyll and Hyde unit because they give up the most run yards in the league. So great at rushing the passer, worst at stopping the run in terms of yardage. And yes, there are other sort of more impactful metrics, but Packers can run the ball a little bit. Jordan Love had a wild stat.
A little bit. Tell that to the Titans, bro. They ran it like 55 times in that game.
Yeah, they're going to have success against the Rams. That pass rush isn't going to matter as much. Jordan Love has proved very competent at beating the blitz. He did look rusty last week, but he also threw a ton of yards and a bunch of touchdowns. So he threw just as many interceptions, which is a very odd stat line. I don't expect that to continue, even though the Rams are good at pressuring the passer. I'm with you. I think the matchup between Packers and Rams this week, boy, I don't care. If you're putting money on this game, I don't care whether it's in pick'ems. I don't care whether it's in money line. Like, take the Packers. Just take the Packers. Like, I don't see a world in which the Rams, in their current state, are an even match for LaFleur and Green Bay.
The main reason I wanted to talk about this game, beyond just acknowledging the plight of Rams fans,
correct,
who are ready to fast forward.
They're going through it.
They're going through it. We've talked about a lot of different Packers games individually without actually talking about the Packers. We have a great talent for doing that, and I wanted to actually talk about this Packers defense because very sneakily, they are one of the best run defenses in the entire NFL. And the only way the Rams even have a shot in this game is if it's another like Kyron Williams game, where it's run, control the clock, keep Jordan Love off the field. I don't think they're going to be able to do that against the Packers because the Packers are big. Like, this is a big physical defensive line. Slayton's 330. Kenny Clark is 315. You have a whole bunch of big edges that also double as like 4 eyes whenever they want to with Preston and Rashawn Gary and Van Nett. Like there's just size everywhere, and you can't push them around. Like this is a physical front. And so looking at a Rams offense that runs more duo than anybody else, like 46%, which is wild. It's like 15% higher than the second place team. Going against a Packers defense that allows less than 2.5 yards per carry against those exact concepts, whether it's duo, whether it's lead, like anything that just goes straight down the middle. The Packers are very good at stopping that because they're so beefy inside. If that's all the Rams have, like, what else can they do? I really, really don't like the matchup for that reason, but I also just wanted to acknowledge how good the Packers are against the run and how well that's going to serve them as they go forward this season, because as the months get colder and as running offense and running defense become more and more important in late in the season, to have the third best EPA per play allowed on the ground, to have the 6th fewest missed tackles allowed against the run, so they don't miss tackles. They're tied for 11th in tackles for loss. They only have 2 runs of 20-plus given up the entire year, and it's to Saquon and JT. So it's like, yeah, if you're going to give up a 20-plus yard carry, it's going to be to Saquon or Jonathan Taylor. But they only gave up 2 of them, and they haven't done that in a couple weeks. Like, this is a dominant run defense. And I think for the teams that rely on the run game to get anything going, like the Rams, the Packers are the last team you want to play. Like, I think they're going to absolutely mash them and take out all of their frustrations from last week out on this Rams team.
It feels very much like a get-right game for the Packers. I am sorry for the Rams fans that are going to have to witness this one because it's gonna take a miracle. Like, if we're going back to the Princess Bride, like, that's the only way this one's gonna work. And there are just too many things, which of course means the Rams are gonna steamroll the Packers. We're gonna come back in the recap episode and go, didn't see that one coming.
Well, the same thing happened against the Niners, right? Where we're like, oh yeah, Niners are going to kill them. The Rams came out and won. We're like, never mind, we're stupid. Like, it could happen, but I'd be surprised, to say the least.
I think we would both be very, very surprised.
And just to hammer this point home, that's a big reason why in our underdog entry, I took Kyren Williams at lower than 88.5 rushing. Believe it or not, Kyren Williams is at 88.5. I saw that and I was like, whoa.
Again, an acknowledgement that they're going to have to run. However effective they're going to be, they're not really saying, but like, basically they're looking at it going, well, what else are they going to do?
Yeah. I mean, I guess 2.1 yards per carry 40 times would give them that, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Ouch.
All right. Last game on the docket, Saints Chiefs. I think this is the Sunday night game. This is a fascinating matchup for a lot of reasons. In our recap show this week, which wasn't really a recap show because we were talking about quarterback situations, but we didn't really touch on the Saints-Falcons game, and I just want to touch on that one really quickly because of how weird it was. And I didn't watch it back until later this week, but when I finally did, I was like, wait. Atlanta scored 26 points with no offensive touchdowns. So Rashid Shaheed muffed a punt, then they got a special teams touchdown by recovering it in the end zone. Then they got a pick 6 off a tip from Derek Carr. And then they got 4 coup field goal. Like, that was all their points. I looked at 26 and I was like, oh, Kirk got going and Bijan got going. I looked at the box score and I was like, where's the touchdowns? So that was a weird game to watch back. And I'm sure Saints fans are like, I can't believe we lost that game because it was so unbelievably preventable. And even going into it, like we said, like the Saints on paper should win. And they should have. And I think we also said the fact that we picked the Saints meant the Falcons were going to win. So technically we got it correct, but in the weirdest way possible. But I do I do have confidence in the Saints even after that loss, because other than 2 plays, pretty much everything happened that we thought was going to happen. And I still have confidence that the Saints are, if not a dominant team, at least like a real team. Like they can actually give the Chiefs a pretty good game here.
I think they can give them a good game, but it's time for the real Saints offense to stand up. Again, we say don't believe week 1. Week 2 can still be a little hazy. By the end of September, we'll know. And the Saints are right down the middle. We are half and half. First 2 Saints games, Carr and Clint set the world on fire. 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, average passer rating of 133.5. The last 2 games, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and an average rating of 75.5. So a pretty big drop off. Are they for real or not? Spags is unlikely to let them have their way to figure it out. Like Steve Spagnuolo's defense is going to come for them and make it very, very difficult to prove their point. Chiefs, for their part, need to figure out how to score some points because, again, much like the Rams, but in a different scenario, as the injuries have stacked up, their point total has declined each week of the season. 27 week 1, 26 week 2, 22 the week after that, and then 17 this last weekend. They've got a destroyed wide receiver core, a banged up RB room. They're going to need to lean on some unlikely contributors. And that, flipping back to the Saints defense, is going to be tough because we've talked about the Saints defense being really physical, tough to throw on. They've allowed the 6th fewest points in the league. They have allowed, this one killed me as I was digging up stats for this game, 1 passing touchdown all year long. 1.
Dude, they're good. Like
They're
that secondary is
really
great.
good. Yeah, tied for 10th most sacks and 12th most pressures in the league. Opponents are trying to run against the Saints at the 4th lowest rate in the league. Only 33.9% of the time our team's trying to run on the Saints. And that's with that secondary. So this is 2 teams. I'm with you. The Saints can give the Chiefs a good game. And I know the Chiefs defense is going to give the Saints offense all they can handle because Spags always comes ready, creates a ton of pressure. Again, we talked about the big change in New Orleans was injuries on the offensive line, losing the center for the year. Like, these are inflection points. So we know Spags is going to push hard. It's going to be hard for the Saints to get right on offense, but same thing we've been talking about. Are the Chiefs going to run out of gas? When are they not going to have quite enough magic to make this happen? When do the injuries catch up with them? If I'm looking at this, I think the Chiefs can like squeeze out one more sort of underpowered victory. But if the Saints play mistake-free football, I could see this being a Saints victory as well because the Chiefs have kind of slowly been grinding to a halt, and the Saints are no pushovers on either side of the ball.
And I think that's the key every single week, right, is don't make mistakes because the Chiefs are always going to give you an opportunity to step on their neck. You just have to do it. But if you don't do it and they get back up, they're going to kill you. You know, like we just saw them live last week at SoFi, you and I did. And, you know, the Chargers had 2 opportunities to step on their neck and they couldn't do it. Like they got stopped inside the 5-yard line, and credits to the Chiefs defense. They got that stop, but like that was crucial because the Chargers defense overall was playing really well. And, you know, they gave up the 1 big shot to Worthy, and those 2 plays were the difference in the game. Like you have to take advantage of your opportunities because the Chiefs are going to take advantage of their opportunities. So you have to keep pace with that. And dare I say, you have to get way ahead of their pace because you know they're going to come storming back. So you have to end them early. And I think, you know, the Saints early in the season, you know, like the Cowboys game, they did that. They were hyper aggressive. They took shots down the field. They were landing these knockout blows. And I think, you know, you look at the last couple of weeks, and they kind of got away from that identity. They got away from that play action, deep shot identity. And I'm not really sure why, because they averaged 12 play action passes per week in the first couple games, and then they had 5 last week. And it's not like the game was, like the game script was going against them. Like they could have leaned on it, and they just didn't. Like this was a Falcons offense that, like I said, had no offensive touchdowns. Like they very easily could have really opened it up and take their shots down the field, and they just didn't do it. So I hope they kind of get back into the play action pass game, which I think has been a strength of theirs. Not to mention the Chiefs' defense. If there's one thing I think you can get them on is play action passes. Like they're sixth highest in terms of completion percentage allowed on play action passes. They've allowed the sixth most yards from play action passes. They have the eighth worst forced incompletion rate for their secondary against play action passes. They have the ninth most first downs allowed. Like that's how you get them, right? Is you slow down their pass rush with a hard play action fake, and then you do whatever you can to isolate either Watson or Shamari Connor in coverage because you don't go after Trent. And you can do that. Like this defensive line is not very good at what they call transition rushes. They're 26th in terms of pressure rate on play action passes because they're really bad, other than Chris Jones, at playing their run responsibility and then transitioning to a pass rush. They're not good at that at all. So it slows down the pass rush. It lets you take advantage of their DBs. They're not as good as Trent because I think as effective as this Chiefs defense has been overall, like Watson is not as good as L'Jarius Sneed. He doesn't move as well. He still is that kind of like, big body brawler of a corner. And if you're lining him up against Quentin Johnston in press, like, yeah, he's going to handle him. But if you make him mirror and match guys in space, like he doesn't move as well. So like you can get Watson in space. Shamari Connor is playing a lot more nickel for them this year because they don't trust a whole lot of their other outside corners. Like they've made Trent play a lot more outside this year compared to last year where he played more in the slot. I think he has like half as many slot snaps this year as outside snaps. So again, they've moved Trent around to accommodate the fact they don't have as many good corners now. So I think all of this is adding up to, the Saints finding Watson, finding Connor, running these play action shots down the field, getting out to an early lead and saying, okay, Mahomes, down Hollywood, down Rashee Rice. Like, can you come back with I don't want to say out of shape, but let's say still rounding into form Travis Kelce and like Sky Moore as your top targets? Like, can you come back against us with that, against our secondary? I don't think you can. So there is a formula for the Saints to win here. Not to make a long story even longer. Like there is a formula. The question is, will the Saints actually do it? I guess we'll see.
Got to commit to play action. Derek Carr is very, very good at play action, and they used it at one of the lowest rates at the end of last year, which is super confounding. It was heartening this year through the first two games that they were using it at a very high rate. Like, hey, the thing you're really good at, you're doing it a lot. Awesome. And then they've fallen away from it. But as you very clearly laid out, that is the path in this game. That is how they can drive the, wooden stake through the heart of the vampire here is play action, but they have to use it. Doesn't do them any good if they keep it in their backpack.
I am kind of assuming that they are going to self-scout and have the self-awareness to get back into what they do well. So I did take Derek Carr at higher than 220.5 passing, which I know seems like wishful thinking on the road in Kansas City at night. I looked it up, by the way. It is a Monday night game. Like, I know that seems like wishful thinking, but I don't know, man. I've just watched enough Chiefs football this season already where I'm like, if anything's going to get them, it's like a big Derek Carr day. Plus Derek Carr, like he knows Spags a lot. Like he was in that division. He's played against Spags a lot. It's not like he's going to be surprised by anything Spags throws at him. So again, rounding off the entire underdog entry, we now have Derek Carr over 225 or 220.5. Kyron Williams lower than 88.5 rushing. Brock Purdy higher than 252.5 passing. Dak Prescott lower than 255.5 passing. Or if you're a new underdog customer, like we said, use the promo code in the description or the QR code on the screen. A new customer will just get Dak higher than half a passing yard. So if you don't feel great about that one, you can swap him out. And then, of course, Garrett Wilson higher than 54.5 receiving. EJ, hearing all those, is there anything you object to?
In principle, yes. It's choices that you picked. So
I know my hit rate hasn't been great this season.
It has
but like,
not been awesome.
I'm just hoping, like with enough data and enough games under our belt,
Right.
we'll have an idea of what's going on. September's always wild. We know that.
It's true. And I understand the logic behind each pick. The probability scares me on a few of them, but I understand how you're getting there. And again, if you pick chalk, scared money doesn't make money. That's how it works.
All right, I think we're going to get out of here, but I appreciate everybody who stuck around for the entire episode. Hope you guys enjoyed the extra little bonus game we gave for you today on the preview show. Also want to thank all of our executive producers over on the Patreon that helped make this possible. Andrew, Connor, Aiken, Liam, and Mike. Once again, appreciate all you boys. Homage is also our clothing partner. I'm wearing an Homage hoodie right now that has a nice big Texans logo on it. If you want to support your favorite NFL team while also supporting us, you can go to Homage at the link in the description below. They have a whole bunch of team merchandise for every single team. They have NFL merchandise, college football merchandise, movies, TV shows. It literally doesn't matter what you buy. Anything you get at that link, including bootleg merch, will directly support the show. EJ, any final words?
It's fall. I'm gonna go find a caramel apple or something. I'm feeling it. It was I didn't tell you this. I stopped in Weed, California, famous Weed, California. Just happened to be when I needed gas. Do you know what the temperature in the morning in Weed, California was yesterday?
Ooh, California in like that late September, early October window. It can still be pretty hot. I'm gonna say like 75 at like 8 a.m.
43 degrees at 7:45 a.m.
It was 100 last week.
Yeah, it was 100 the day before when I left your house going through the mountains north of Los Angeles. It was 101, actually. The next morning, Weed, California, elevation just over 3,000 feet. It was clear and sunny. I stepped out to get gas. I was wearing shorts, and I was like, okay, 43 degrees. So it feels like fall. It looks like fall. The leaves are turning. The football is turning, and I'm ready for all of it.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoy your first big Sunday of the season. Again, remember, the international games start early, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. So make sure to grab your breakfast and coffee earlier on Sunday. I know I will. I know EJ will, because we got 14 hours of football coming our way. Thank you once again for watching and listening, wherever you happen to watch and listen. We'll be back on Monday to recap all of these games, talk about what we got right, what we got wrong. Hopefully we start to get more stuff right at this time of year. But yeah, we'll see you guys on Monday for that. And then, of course, next Thursday for our TNF live stream. So until then, later.